why is testing your SAP integration important, and how do you test SAP PI and PO? So a little about SAP integration. SAP integration is done with process integration or process orchestration, which is essentially the same thing. So it's the most used platform to doing any SAP integration. It supports a number of different adapters for communications like IDOC, RFCs, file, REST, SOAP, all of the most commonly used communication forms. It covers conversion between message structures, so the message would be received in the format that the required target system needs. And then newer integration would be done with process in SAP Cloud Platform integration, which also supports a lot of integration with different cloud integration. A lot of it is provided with pre-delivered content to make it a lot easier for you to do integrations, and it's a more flexible platform to do integrations. But currently most integrations that you have in your landscape is with the PI/PO format. So why is testing important? 35% of development cost is for testing. So we've been going through a lot of different research, and there's a consistent number around 30 to 40% of all development cost is just for testing. And the number of experts I've been talking with on SAP integration say it's probably in the same range. The only thing where testing is a lot bigger is if you're doing bug fixing or applying support packages. Then testing may be even bigger percentage of the development and deployment cost. So it is a financial thing that you need to be sure on when you're doing your development, because it is going to cost you. What does the cost of testing cover? So this developer test, this is where the developer is trying to rerun a set of scenarios, trying to see if the mappings works and it's giving the expected result. Then if you're doing any regression testing or retesting thing, you want to do collect some data from your test system or productive system, run these through and verify that it works. So there's also a cost involved in getting this data. Then you got unit test, where you as a business owner needs to figure out how does this work, what is relevant in this, and is this working as I expect it to do. Then you may have a user acceptance test where users is testing this and at least verifying that it's giving the right result in the target systems. You may have a cost involved in creating automated test cases. There's also a cost involved in creating all the documentation required for proving that you have done the required test and it looks like it's supposed to be doing. And then you have a cost involving all the coordination that you need to do to make sure that the things that you're transporting has been tested. And most important, all of this time is something that's taken away from your business just for testing, whereas it could be done a lot more efficient if you had a good tool for it. Obviously, you could skip the testing, but what would happen if you did not test? It would create failure in your business, meaning if a message fails, you may not be able to process the order within the time limit that you want. So I've had scenarios where I was not able to process an order before the cutover window, meaning that the business would have to do something to figure out how do we deal with this order. Can we put it in anyway? And make sure that all of these scenarios were working. And that's something that's taking a lot of time and may even impact your relationship with your partners. If you're only able to deliver based on the time periods, then it can have an escalating effect, and if you're unable to follow the SLAs, you may not be able to deal with your customers anymore because they require you to live up with SLAs. It may also affect your reporting to authorities. If you're unable to process your e-invoices at the right time, it could have a pretty nasty effect on the business. And then it's expensive to the business. There's a lot of extra support time you need to put into it. There's change management. You need to figure out how do we process this, can test it. And then obviously it's the lost time. You're missing to deliver products that your customers ordering, or whatever is for that specific case. So what are the different types of tests that you can perform? So most of the time when I've been out and testing together with business people, I've done my development test trying to figure out, does this work as I would expect it to do? But then you, as a business person, would have to try to figure out, do we test this? So most of the time when I've seen it, it doesn't really cover the essential issues, mostly due to a low complexity. That most of the time, if you're doing anything with a sales order and sales order line and delivery items, you need to have all three items and hopefully multiple line items for each, because that would make it a lot more complicated scenario and would test the limits of the PI mappings. But a lot of time I don't see it's too complicated to really create this in a business perspective, so it's mostly skipped. So that means we're skipping important part of the process that we're just cutting out because it's too complicated to create these things. So it does not give the complete overview about if this is really still working, or if there's things we could do better. And then it involves a lot of coordination with partners, getting those involved, and it is really a time-consuming process getting all of this up and running. So the normal way a SAP PI developer would test is he would log on to your productive system. He would find the similar methods that you've just made a change to. So you download the source and the target from the monitor if these have been saved. Then he would send a message through with the test tool. He would download the two output messages, and then he would verify that those look identical. And then obviously this needs to be done for a lot of messages. And when you're verifying, you cannot just do a one-to-one comparison, because there's counters, there are dates formats into it that changes, and you need to account for that. But obviously there's a lot of other variants about how you can test and make sure that it works in all the scenarios. So there's some manual tests we can test, and this was one of these. The benefit of this, it's really a flexible way of testing. You can test the different things that you want. It covers from the SAP system to your warehouse system end to end. The difficult or challenges with it is it takes a lot of time for testing, and you have to do that every time you do a retest. And then you may miss some of the complexity that you're just creating a one-line order instead of the multiple complex order that you would see in your productive systems with hundreds of different lines. You could also build a tool yourself, or use something and put them together. So I've seen people using SAP UI for creating some testing scenarios. And there's no license cost with this. It would match the company's requirements. The challenge is it takes a lot of time to set up these test cases, maintain them, and then it only covers what has been configured. And then obviously you need to maintain these test cases as your system evolves. There's also some automated tools for this, like HP's ALM or IBM's Rational. The benefit of this is they're really flexible tools that they allow you to test all the changed objects. They cover end-to-end flows, so you can create a message in your SAP system and verify that it looks correct by looking into the database of your warehouse system. That's also one of the challenges. It takes a lot of time to set up these test cases, creating them, and it's a completely new language you need to set up your integration in, because you need to specify all your inputs and your expected outputs and program all of these things together. So it's a completely new way of testing things that the developers need to account for. Then you got some tools that's really specific for the PIPO scenarios that allow you to create a simple test a record replay scenario. So they allow you to set up a test case by taking some of your existing messages, and then you can just rerun them multiple times and verify that the system looks identical. It covers most, if not all, of the integration logic that you have in your platform, so all the things that will change with a support package is covered. Sometimes you'd find that it's only testing the PIPO scenarios, and it does not cover all the communications that you have in your system that you otherwise could test with some of the other tools if they supported it. There are currently two tools for doing this. There's the Figaf ERT. It covers all integration. It is based on the Java stack, so it tests all the logic mappings for all the messages. It's able to compare XML, JSON, EDIFACT messages, and it just takes 5 minutes to set up test cases for an interface. Then there's the Infor ERTT, which is a different tool. It's built on the SAP backend, and it's able to test messages that are coming from your PI system, and then it's verifying based on what it looks into the in the database. It comes with some templates for what are the standard formats that you would look for. So if you have an order, it should look in these different tables for these values. And if you want to send messages, it's also able to do that with ECAT. Then you can send messages and compare the result. Figaf, we have created the ERT tool that's a Java-based tool that's really simple to set up. So now I'll just show you how easy it is to actually set up a scenario in it. So the first thing you want to do is you want to select what are the scenarios that you want to record from your productive system. Then you just say record messages and say the number of messages that you want to record. Say for instance 5 messages. Then the ERT system would insert modules in the beginning and the end of the processing chain and send a message to this productive system. So for the next 5 messages that process on this ICO, it would save the message when it reaches here and also when it reaches the receiver adapter. Then we got these 2 messages, and we can then, they would be collected, saved on your test system, and then you just have to wait until you have received your 5 messages. So now we're ready to test, and it's simply just select run these test cases that we have, and we can group them together with multiple different interfaces so they match the scenarios that you want to test. So you simply just select run. Then what we'll do is we'll create a new communication channel that looks like your original channel. The benefit is we're using the XI30 protocol, and what that means is we're able to actually reuse your existing ICO, send the message in through this, and process it all the way. And then when we reach the receiver module, the last module that we have added, we will save the message. And then we can compare these two messages. So we got the expected we got from our productive system and the actual we got from our test system. And we can see there's a difference here in one of the date fields. And obviously this is okay. So we don't want this to pop up every time. So we can just simply add and ignore exception with an XPath. Just by clicking the line, we'll get this sample XPath. We can say yes. And then next time we run it, the message would be processed and it would ignore these fields. So we only get to see the fields that actually is different. So why do you want to implement ERT? It's easy to use. It automates a lot of the manual processing regarding testing, and it covers all the essential issues of testing. You're able to test with complex scenarios that you're getting from your productive system where you got the hundreds of different line items. It is able to cooperate with your workflow tools. So if you have HPLM, you can call these functions to test it. It saves a lot of time in your testing, and it ensures that your business is running and you don't have to spend too much time on testing, and messages would not fail as much. So ERT is a simple tool that allows you to test complex scenarios. You can learn more at figaf.com/ERT.